I hit the go button, so we are live right now. I don't want you like sharing secrets.
Means I got it set up straight now. Let's see.
Are you looking at? You're the
Yeah.
okay.
I can help you with that.
Yep, I think we're good. Yeah, we should be good.
Is there more coming?
I would hope so.
Okay.
I know I heard from Mr. Mertens. He just asked, "Are we still meeting?" I said, "Yeah." So.
You just got it. I speak French at the beginning. Or no?
Brett, whatever that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I knew there was some kind of.
K through 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little warm in here.
It's cold outside, that's all I know.
It is cold outside.
But really, it's season.
I had no idea it was supposed to be this cold this week. And Monday, I mean, I obviously had to get here extra early, and I go from my house to the garage, and I was thinking it was cold, but I wasn't really thinking about it. And then it was like halfway, well, just maybe a little bit before lunch, and some kids were talking about how cold it was. I looked at the thermometer; it was like 3 degrees. I couldn't believe it.
And then, with the wind besides.
Yeah, they said it was like 20 some wind chill.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
Is that a Beatles type?
it is.
I like it.
Thank you. I love the Beatles.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hello, Randy.
Hello.
Is there any seating arrangement?
First one is up.
Take a chair. All right. Jackie's sitting very strangely because she has to leave early. She thinks this is a lot more formal than it actually is, I guess.
Video. Want to make a commotion.
You guys
So
ready?
now when you leave, you're gonna end up tripping over the tripod.
It
It's gonna go down.
Yes.
No, not. I haven't made that switch.
How about yourself?
No, I can't go that.
A little shocked this morning. I was not expecting 8 below zero.
That's exactly what Mr. Nichols was supposed to. I know, it's like, whoa.
I'm sure the news did show it last night getting that cold.
I didn't even watch the news last night, so I was totally oblivious. Yeah.
It was cold. That's one of the most miserable things of being in the trucking business, of course. No different from you guys trying to start equipment up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's never any fun, so.
I know, I even let my car run for a while because we're using our garage for a big party this weekend.
No.
So it was parked outside and I let that sucker run for a while before I took off.
Hey, Greg,
Hi. Here we can slide a little bit more.
it's 1:30 slip for you.
I know, I'm later than Randy, that's bad.
Last meeting, I think I was early. I came in the office. Next week.
You were really.
Yeah, really early.
All right. Good afternoon.
Sorry, I was running. Oh,
An ambulance call. I guess we can excuse an ambulance. Did they drive you here with the lights on?
I wish.
All right. Well, most of us are here, so let's get going. I hate starting meetings late because why wait for someone if you don't even know if they're on their way. So we'll get going here. I'm not going to have a whole lot to say this today. This is your time to discuss what you've read and what your thoughts on these different companies. We've got 9, or one of them is just an architectural firm, but I'm confident that any one of these could do the job. So I think we're lucky in that we've got a good group to choose from. So that being said, somebody want to start off with some impressions or?
Well, I'll just ask, which one do you consider just the architectural firm?
ATSR.
Yes.
ATSR, yeah.
Okay.
I guess Wold too. Wold does. They can do more.
They both, I mean,
Yeah.
they contract with, they do those services, but they have a list of their vendors that they work with.
That's what I was considering Wold as just like, but I wasn't sure about the other
How
one.
come
Yep.
you didn't apply? You not interested? You get notified. You not interested?
Well, I guess I'll start.
All right.
My opinion anyway. So as I read these, and I know everyone has their personal preferences, the way they choose things, but I'm a hands-on guy. You know, I can read these all day long and I
Yeah.
can leave with no strong opinions for or against any one of them. So I didn't make a lot of phone calls, but I just called some contractors that I deal with that I know have worked on school projects and stuff. And the funny thing is, about the time I talked to one or two would give me a good reference on one contract, one company. Next one would say, "Oh God, don't use them."
Yeah.
And then but I'll just say Wold was one that did come to the top of the list as strictly just the architectural and engineering firm. I do understand, though, they also do sublet out even their architectural work, which or engineering work at times, which I don't like. If it's them, I want their employees doing it, or we're going to get a little better person. They have more at stake when it's their in-house people versus subletting it out typically. So, and this is off I think we need to go out and visit a few sites, a few projects that people have done. That said, that has limited reference for us as well, because no one wants to admit they made a mistake.
Right.
I mean, you can go to a school and they may have used the company and it was terrible, but in their mind, they're not going to say, well, we made a huge mistake. They're going to say, yeah, it turned out fine.
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to admit that. I don't want to admit it. When I
No.
screw up, that's just how it works. So,
I can talk to Wold a little bit if you want. They're the ones that built the rec center in Redwood, the school in Redwood. They've done work at the hospital. So I've
Which
worked
one
with
did?
them. Wold.
Wold.
Yep. So I've worked with Wold personally
Okay.
on the rec center and then the addition to the rec center. Obviously there's always struggles.
Yeah.
That's just human nature, but very, very pleased. We turned out with very good projects. We had no issues with budgets, unless, things that are unforeseen and they can't control either. If you start soil, burying and there's issues, there's not a lot you can do about that.
right.
But, I think it doesn't matter which vendor you pick, you're always going to go, we should have did it this way. I mean, it's just how it is. But I would echo that Wold is a very good firm to work with. I've worked with a couple different project leads from there. So I just wanted to throw that 2 cents in.
That's good. And I'd say the same thing, which we already had the discussion. It's more on the person that we get that's going to manage the company. It's not how it should be, but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I heard that from other contractors that have bid these projects. And I just called, guys that said, hey, how did you think the bidding process was when this company did it? Do you think it was done fair, equitable? And no one really had any big issues. They all thought. Contractors said Wold was just dead on remodeling projects that they had done. And then the next guy called and Wold said we had 68 change orders on our issue that Wold did.
Yeah.
But is that driven by consumer or by them?
Right. And I mean, that's what you get into.
Yeah.
And then I called the Benson school because I have a business in Benson, and pay my tax funny to the school. And so I called and office manager or business manager up there, Katie's her name. I don't know from Adam, I don't know her last name, but I talked to her and she said they used a different firm. It used to be ARY out of Alexandria. They were bought out by INS Group, she said.
Oh.
And she said, we had a lot of change orders, but it was, well, this door we want to swing the other way. No major, huge structural things. But she said, we did have a lot of those. But they hired then a project or a general manager of Breakbach. I don't know if anyone's heard of them. Breakbach. I think they're actually based in Elrosa, Minnesota. Ryan Breakbach actually does a lot of the projects himself. I just spent 2 minutes on the website. I mean, I see they've done some Walmarts, they've done some large stuff. And she said they just can't talk highly enough about them. So then I went to my contractors again and have you ever worked with Breakbach? Every single one came back and said Breakbach. It's like BREICH, roughly. Bach. That was really the only general contractor that I got that didn't have. And she said one of our contractors said, the reason we like Breakbach, they came in, he is mainly just a project manager. However, they do have a couple crews that work within them and he has equipment. So like the Benson School project, they said, well, one day none of the subs had a crane. They needed a crane. It was holding up stuff. Breakbach says, well, we have a lot of this equipment ourselves. So they send their crew down. He said that really helped to keep that project just moving because anytime there was a little shortage or something that fell, which you always get, they just came in, knocked it out and was done. So they couldn't speak highly enough, any of those guys on those, and very down to earth rural Minnesota people that he said this, and the Benson lady said they just came in and made a lot of changes and said, there's no reason to spend your money on this. We can do this. So she said, we actually ended up significantly under budget. She said, we added a lot of new stuff we weren't going to do because we were so far under budget. And at the end of the day, still came in under budget.
So they were a subcontractor or what do you call it?
I don't know who they used to be a general contractor.
Okay.
So they generaled the whole thing. I was also surprised Benson School contracted. They hired some subs themselves without going through it. So that's a liability that I would not
And they
suggest.
used IS&G,
Yeah, they used INS.
or is it
I believe it's INS.
Okay.
Out of Mankato.
Okay, I think that's their new, I think they were IS&G, now they're IS.
That could be. They
Something
bought
like
out this ARY company, she said, that used to be out in Alexandria.
Okay,
So
that's who did our park.
they kind of did the layers and
Yeah.
I talked to Greg a little bit earlier about it too. And so you talk about those different layers to make sure you get some cost competitiveness and none of these relationships that we end up paying for. So, and Greg brought up today, like SiteLogic, for example, which I really like having somebody come in and saying, okay, this is your school enrollment. This is what it to be. You're gonna have X number of kids. What should we have? What do we need to have to at least support our numbers properly?
And
what does that have to, what do we need to do? Before we even talk to an engineer or anybody else, some specialist that designs schools.
to assess what we have.
Well, they've got it. We need somebody that's going to look at what we have, making recommendations, and then, and going into the communities and
But that's all part of what they do.
yeah, that's what we want. We want somebody that does all of that.
Well, I don't think you want one, you don't want, I'm not saying want one company. I think we want to hire one company separate. That's all they do.
Yeah.
That's all they're hired
Yeah.
for. They come in and say, your school is lacking this. You should have X number of square feet, X number of classrooms. And that's all that company's hired to do. So there is no conflict of interest on them doing
Exactly.
anything later. That's
So more breaking up the process.
absolutely
Yeah.
3 processes at least.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's
And then would that consultant also look at curriculum to help determine and
Right.
like just take the shop class, like the needs that they would need to produce
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
today's type of shop class.
Absolutely.
If you
That's
look
what,
at Site
So more
Logic,
strategic planning than,
their information is, a lot of people who work there were teachers or were superintendent at one time. It's in their information. And I think
Scott
that's a
Munson
big
from
plus.
SiteLogic visited,
Oh,
and-
yeah.
Yeah, Denny and I gave him a tour of the building. We gave 4 tours, I think, total. Um, And yeah, he used to be principal at Benson and superintendent at Morris. And that's what he said too, is just a lot of former educators on board that understand the need. Like every business has a different architectural need. So I was impressed by that.
I thought it was interesting. I should have maybe printed this a little bit bigger, but
Do you want my glasses?
no. The comment I had in theirs was what makes their company different from others, demographic and enrollment projects. So they even looked at from an educational functional, the district outlines and what that looks like in addition to their strategic planning. So that was one of the comments I found interesting
Right.
with them. But they did the Painesville Tech Center and their community center. So at least like some of my concern with some of these is, do they really know rural Minnesota? Like we're not metro, we're not Wisconsin, we're
Basically, all they do is schools, which is good.
Mhm.
You know, the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it.
Right.
You know,
Right. Learn from your mistakes all the time. Right.
one thing I really didn't see in him, and it probably can't do it, but I was kind of a little disappointed that no one really, except for unforeseen things, but no one really guaranteed that the person that you worked with would stay there for the entire project. That's a big thing. I know that all of them said, well, if you don't like who they have, they're allowed to pick someone else from the team. But
Mhm.
the other side of that coin is to actually have someone that stays from the beginning to the end. You know, when we did this section, 3 of them.
Really.
One started and a little ways down the road. They did it on a hospital job down in southern Minnesota. And the person we had, he was the only one that really had experience in hospitals, and hospitals are a little bit different. So they pulled him off and stuck him down there. So we got a new one, and we got partway through, and he had some personal problems. So they didn't actually have anybody else to send here. They actually wound up hiring a guy out of Wilmer to come and finish the project out. And that was bad, because
Yeah.
we didn't hardly have anybody to really hold responsible for nothing afterwards,
Yeah. It would be tough to guarantee we're going to keep the same person
because
there,
they're,
but because you never know, somebody
No,
gets a
so-
new job or
yeah.
whatever. But I guess I would want to know that if they have a bigger, better project come up, you're not going to switch out the guy that's been working with us.
and I think we heard it the opposite way because that's the question that was asked in the screening.
Yeah.
Like if we didn't connect well with
yeah,
who you give us.
Yeah. Get someone else, which is good too, because if you can't work with somebody,
Yeah.
you can't work with them,
Yeah.
But there is 2 sides of that issue,
Right.
Can you get that in writing, depending on who you end up with, that if they change those out throughout there, they're still going to be held responsible for no matter who they put in there. If we have problems, even though they didn't follow through with the one guy, can you
Yeah.
have that in writing saying, well, the buck still stops with you?
It would be really in the original contract anyway. But it's just like you said, the guy might start and have a plan. He's been here from day one, and he brings somebody in new, and he may have no idea where he's going.
Well, there's
and
other
spend
problems,
more
like-
money that
If you have an architect and you put it out and you have a general contractor and that's all you had. There are some advantages to that, but everyone goes along with management companies because, well, basically the simple reason is because if the school pays the bills, you save the sales tax. That's the big selling point of all of them. The downside of that, of course, is they take and split everything up. They do that because they try and get the best price. But there's really some serious downsides to that. You don't have anybody to fall back on when stuff don't work afterwards. Like when they put the heating unit in this building here, they split it all up to different contractors. Well, Train got the units, but Pappy Boiler's got controls, and they got computer controls. The 2 didn't mesh. They had a hell of a time. That's what happens when you mix stuff up. And then,
Yeah.
Another simple thing was their first day school started. The stairway they put from first floor up to the science wing, handrails on both sides, and there's a landing and handrails on both sides. See what's going on. Well, we just took a hole and pulled them all off. All 4 of them we pulled off. So kids wouldn't trip over them. And what it all come down to in the end is by splitting everything up that way, we still had construction managers here, but of course that was the third one already, but they didn't know who to hold responsible. Because it came down to, well, let's see, we split it all up. We hired a group to put the metal studs up. And hired somebody else to put the sheetrock up. Well, someplace along the line, they forgot that you have to put a backing in there for the handrails to have it fastened.
Right.
Nobody wanted to take responsibility for that. Well, then we went down into the library, and those are just short handles. You know, it's only like 3 steps or so. Same thing was done with those. They just took a lag bolt and screwed them into the sheetrocks, just pulled them all off.
Jeez.
Eventually, what actually happened is they couldn't figure out who was responsible. You know, should it have been the guys that put the studs up, or the guys that put the sheetrock up, or somebody else was hired to put the handrails up. And we actually had to go out and find somebody, sheetrock out and put backing in there because they just couldn't figure out who they were going to hold responsible. And that's the thing out and getting the cheapest. Now, if we hadn't had any, just had a architect and a general contractor, the general contractor would be responsible no matter what happens. So there's some advantages, but everybody does it because they want to save that 6% sales tax.
I realize that, so if the school pays the bill,
That's,
pay it.
yeah, then
Makes
these
sense.
schools don't pay taxes, and that's the reason, and that's their big selling point. Well, we don't cost you any money, but in a way they do, because you don't really have anybody to hold responsible. You really don't. Sometimes you might, like, we would have been better off if we really would have. But, you know, that's just my point, because I went through it.
Valid point, yeah.
One other piece that Wold had in their their packet was facts versus emotions, and how to help, explain that in the community as you go through the process. I thought that was interesting, because a lot of times we all get caught up in emotions and don't always think about the facts or believe, what are the true facts and how do you communicate those through. So I just found that interesting that they pointed that out, because that's a big thing.
All right.
ATSR, so they did Wabasso's project. I'm super intrigued with them. I love how Wabasso's school turned out, with their gym and their walking, and then how they do community ed and open it up to the public. They also did the Marshall School, which clearly is very nice, very large, and has a lot of amenities. But one of the pieces that they had in there is they do 3D modeling of their options. And I thought that was interesting. What kind of sparked some of the conversation after we went through the referendum here was there was no pictures, there was no drawings, so for them to call that out, I thought that was interesting. I think they were one of the few that actually pointed out that they would do that. I'm sure more would, but it just kind of sparked the whole interest of people. That was one of the complaints.
Important, right?
Yep.
I'd like to touch on that a little bit. When we were going through the referendum and when I just got on the school board, I did a virtual MSBA conference, a learning one. And I purposely sat in on one of the buildings and referendums and whatnot. And the one company that's in here, and I'm not putting a plug in for them, I'm just mentioning them because they're the ones that put on this conference, was Nexus. And I had a bunch of questions. And he said too, you should always get 2D and 3D renderings from any company. And I said, we don't have those. He goes, you have to have those. And he just gave me a whole list of questions to ask at the school board meetings, because he said, these are very important things. And I just found that to be a bright light, because we were sitting with one set of options and then they throw that in. I thought, these are things that haven't even been addressed that should have been looked at.
I think too, though, renderings and photos are great, but they're also false impressions, because they don't always look like what those were. So how do you find that good balance of what's essentially perceived as real and not? Because a rendition can come out and it might not look anything like that. So I think it's not maybe about the outside facade, it's about classrooms and things like that.
That wasn't even the topic. The outside had nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
People wanted to see what classrooms they were getting, what they were getting for gyms. No one, anybody I talked to ever talked about what the outside looked like.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the 2D and 3D of the layout, the site plan, the whole insides of the buildings.
Yep.
So you could talk and see that in the public and be like, oh yeah, I like that, but you know what?
But
Yeah,
it's
and bring up
still,
questions.
It just changed. I mean, they
It-
talked
it-
about,
because we had that, I mean, it's not comparable at all, but when we added on to the rec center, like we had pictures of the senior center and what it was going to look like. And it didn't turn out to be that way. And we had some issues in the community of why doesn't it look like the picture? Well, that was a rendition. That's like the theory of how it can look. So I'm just saying, how do we cautiously do that? I feel it's important. You know,
I
it's
really
just-
think before it goes out for a vote, those renditions need to be actual pictures.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. You probably have a preliminary, primary. This is roughly, but before it goes out, I mean,
Gotta be-
to zero.
it should
pretty
be right on
close.
the.
And so I think that
Yeah,
goes back to your
obviously.
architect, like how close can you get?
Yeah,
You know, for that project I'm referencing, it was just a visual so people understood what we were trying to accomplish, not realizing the implication that it would actually have for
But
such a simple
In all
project.
aspects to what Randy's saying too, I get that because you want to see the final pictures, just like you would if you're doing a house build. You're not going to pay somebody to start putting that up unless you know what your kitchen's going to look like. I mean, if I'm going to have the stove and the refrigerator that I want in there, I don't want just kind of a picture that's going to change. I'm going to know that I know that I know what's going in there.
in all fairness, this is honestly, like, you have your house, right? This is all community driven. This is business driven. This is teacher driven, staff driven. So like, there's so many different renditions of it that it's hard to nail it down until you're to that point. Like,
But you
And-
should get through that with your preliminaries.
but
Mhm.
I
for
think
us,
that's
it
a
was
question.
it was a cost thing. I mean, it was going to cost us an extra $30,000 or whatever, $15,000, and we didn't even know if it was going to pass or not.
I think
I
that's
think
the
it'd have been Money
question.
well spent
Yeah.
to push it towards getting it passed.
But isn't that the question, like what we're trying to
Right,
pinpoint? Like,
absolutely.
how
So-
much will you do? What will it cost to get
Right.
to that point so you can make those decisions
Absolutely.
instead of kind of behind, you know,
right.
this is
What
something
it was.
this we learned was extremely important. How do we correct it moving
Yep.
forward? I think too, though, how do you educate community on curriculum? Like why, you know, if you haven't really left the community to see what a technology center does, how do you help educate the community on the purpose of that? How do you help the community understand that a classroom doesn't look like it did 50 years ago?
Right.
I think those are things is how can this, whoever you pick or choose, how do they stress the importance of change and what it does for curriculum? Because that's one thing I picked up on this last vote too, was if you haven't seen a new school and how new learning works, or you haven't seen a technology center, do you really understand the value of it? You didn't need it growing up. Why do you need it today? You know, how does it help our community? How do we grow our here? How do we offer programs that they can stay here and continue to raise their families? So I think
That's a struggle we always have in the school. Everybody went to school. Everybody has a school experience. When I went into the hospital to get my carpal tunnel surgery, I didn't have an expectation. I was like, well, wheel me wherever you want. Okay, I'll do whatever you say. But we have these experiences with school, and so everybody feels they know how to best do it. And it looks like rows of chairs, and that's what it was like. And yeah, so sometimes it gets difficult, and that whoever we go with is going to have to help to get this through. That's got to just be part of the deal.
I think something else that's going to be hard to get across to people, but especially a lot of older people that they disconnect with the schools if they don't, they just say, well, classrooms are classrooms, they got a room that's good enough. We don't have to vote for it. But I think the other half of the referendums to try and point out that heating and air conditioning and sewer lines and all that, which basically an entire facility have to be updated. It's not just, well, the classroom is good enough, they can get by. You can't get by without those things, and that's something that's going to have to be pointed out.
Yeah.
The school is not going to get by on those things, it just can't.
Yeah, it's tough in May when you're looking at the math classrooms and they're 98 degrees inside the classroom, and
Yeah.
we're expecting these kids to learn math.
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from these types of committees, because when we all get to the point we're comfortable and go ahead, then we each have a group of people that will probably listen to us.
yeah, you
And that
start
group
to
listens
plan
to
it
the
out.
next group
Mhm.
and say, hey, this is needed. We have to cannot do this. You have to update your facilities and And I think we all need to be educated. And you mentioned like the tech center. We went to Painesville. I mean, really amazing for a
Yeah.
smaller school, but almost all remodeled. I mean, they added on some, but remodeled most of the facility what they had. And I believe that was Site Logic. You said correct,
Painesville
Same
was,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, some of
Yep.
them still.
or at
Yep.
least they did that preliminary.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I really think for us to start is we put all of these aside and we pick maybe 2 companies or 3 that's all they do is design schools, curriculum based on our school. What do we need for our number of kids? The curriculum we want to provide, and what do we need? And look at what we have and tell us what we need, what we need to design roughly. And then we take that information, then we come back to these guys. So now we've got a truly independent review. They're in no way, shape,
how
trying to
many,
coerce us.
how many of these do that strategic work? Like I didn't pick up on,
Site Logic did, I think Walt did. No, they didn't. They were more of the engineer, architect.
Yeah.
But I think R.A. Morton was one that I had written down that. it's-
or maybe Nexus. I don't know. I didn't pick
I don't
up
know.
on a lot of
I have
that.
to call them and
I have to say I was really impressed with Nexus, but I'm concerned that they're going to be a lot like ICS. I think they try to do all of it. Now maybe we're able to say, well, we want you to do this, but we want this to be separate and that to be separate. It'd be a question for them.
I think you make it very plain. This is all we're hiring for. You do not expect anything further than this.
Exactly.
This is what we want.
Well, and I think we need to look at the costs, because I don't know, I mean, financially, can we do it? I mean, we've already got how much
well, we
money.
were
stuck
looking
into
at
it.
putting up a $60 million school. I think if you're this,
But that's with a
30,000.
referendum tree, so that's with money coming
Well,
in.
Well,
I think that we need to look at the cost to see what it's gonna cost us to hire 2 separate firms.
I think it'd be interesting
we
to
have to
see
do
who
it.
would do this.
Yeah,
before
I
they get their
agree.
Foot in the door. I mean,
To do what?
to get their foot in the door for the
Do it for
next,
free?
not that you're guaranteeing, but I'm pretty sure as a company, you know that if you can provide these services at a reasonable rate, you're already getting a higher check mark to move forward.
Right.
Not guaranteed by any means, but
I'm not going to say who it was, because at the end of this, I don't want anyone saying that I was pushing a company at you guys. But one of them did say, there's a chance we could, because ICS has already been in and done a lot. They might be able to waive the starter fee.
I have a question, I guess, for all of you is your intent that someone comes in and does a whole new assessment, or do you feel that what ICS has done, is that sufficient?
Do we have that assessment? I've never seen it. I mean, that's a good
Someplace,
starting point.
yeah.
To go through that then.
Go through it, but I won't put any weight into it.
I was just more curious
Yeah.
what people thought, like, because somehow we're gonna have to communicate that, if that's step 2, or do we plan on, can we use this? Can they compare to it? Does it save us money?
I would be. We've got to address the fact that 81% wasn't comfortable with whatever we were trying to do last time. So if we've got to do something completely different,
But I think if nobody's aware that we have it,
Yeah.
is it a worthwhile document, and can we maybe use
Need
parts
to
of it?
Use it, look at it, but in my opinion, we need a whole assessment, honest assessment, where do we go forward from here?
that leads to my question too, starting out here. I was going to ask you, so do we still have the cart before the horse? And the reason I ask this is, given our circumstances and our buildings and our enrollment, and with what happened with BLH with that operational levy getting voted down, do we need to sit down? Are we interested in sitting down and visiting with them?
Did you call?
So I called, left 2 messages for the superintendent, did not hear back, sent an email, and she did respond then and said that there is no interest. So.
And I totally understand what you're saying, but I look at our students today. If we're looking at doing a strategic plan to look at the curriculum, like our curriculum today, our students today, how does that look going forward? that doesn't shut the door on those opportunities in my world. Like, I feel like those are conversations. Maybe it doesn't start with joining schools. Maybe it starts with, I'll just throw some random idea out, hiring a co-curricular coordinator that 2 districts can use and starting to look at curriculum differently, where they're still independent school districts, but we're starting to break down those territories with classes, with different,
And they're game
methods.
with that.
and I even think of, again, this is just me and my thoughts, but like curriculum coordinator I thought of, and then I thought of a finance director. You know, could you share? And those are maybe not, I'm not here every day, I'm not running the business, I don't know, but just trying to think differently on if we're, you know, it just starts to break down that territory. So maybe going forward, maybe there's opportunity that we start to mesh, but it could take years to bring schools together. And do we have that kind of time for our own students? And if we lost that's my only concern. I'm not opposed to discussions. I'm not opposed to looking at that. My fear is it's just time sensitive. And do we have that time? And are there other ways that we can start to connect? And maybe there's ways that we can connect with RCW too, with sharing teachers or sharing, admin staff. I don't know. I'm not.
Well, the
in the
reason I
day-to-day
brought it up
business.
is I thought, like, if we could have on a visit with them, depending if the group is interested, whether we keep buildings, if we're gonna, if they know that location is open, that it's not like we want to do something with you, but you're all coming this way. Of course, they're not gonna want anything to do with us.
Mhm.
But if we put everything out on the table and say, location, everything is out on the table, let's sit and have a discussion. Are you? Because then at that point, that's a for sure. Okay, you definitely don't want to even come to the table to talk about location if it is going to be a one school for all and combining another.
But do you think
District.
ultimately, if hypothetically, if the 2 districts combined, you would get by with one school? I feel it would probably be split somehow.
You'd probably have
I
to
don't
split
know.
it, and then,
Well, and that's
and
a
also if they
conversation to
were,
have.
if they were
I don't
gonna
know.
combine, I think the, I haven't talked to anybody about this from there, but the people I've talked to around here feel that if they were gonna come, and we were gonna do something together, most likely we might get some buy-in from Hector, but Stewart, they're not gonna wanna drive all the way here when they can just drive up to Hutch or Glencoe.
But yeah, they probably wouldn't drive all the way here, but maybe they drive to the east or the west side of Hector. You know what I'm saying? Because you find a centrally located area.
Hector would be definitely the,
And then would we lose Lake Lillian? I just feel, and I think that's where part of me just wishes the state would come in and say, here's your boundaries, here's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so sentimental to communities
Yeah.
and to the vibrance of their community. It just gets very difficult. And it goes back to that emotions and facts. And that's where I just look at, looking at what our needs are, not to shut the door down going forward on anything, but how do we start to slowly make connections with our neighboring districts?
I definitely see both sides of points of what you're talking about, but I will say that bringing them in, especially since we have some new members on here. If I get questioned, if I come up with this, part of the board and we all agree to put something on a referendum at some point, I don't want someone to come back to me and say, well, did you talk to Buffalo Lake again? So no, that was already done. So I'd like to have that discussion just so we could say, yep, I was there. These guys were all here. All the new members were there. Like Teresa said, we offered them involvement from the very beginning and they chose not to be. So there's nothing more we can do because some of our neighbors right now feel like, I'll just say it if I'm hurt anyone's feelings, but the truth is the truth. They feel like Olivia's going to build the new school, try to suck our kids and say the hell with us. I mean, I hear that and I get it. It's like, yeah, so we go to them, let them be part of that process. And because, none of us like having stuff just jammed down our throat. We want to feel, if we got to accept it, we just want to feel like we had part of it being in that deal. So I think to some of that point is I kind of agree. One, so those new members can sit in there and say, yes, we can check it off. We can tell the public we checked it off. They said, no, forget it, ain't going to happen. So we have that peace of mind. But secondly is maybe we say, all right, we're starting from scratch now. We're not doing our project that we want you to come. We're starting from scratch. We want you to include it. Maybe maybe they're going to get enough pressure, whether they want to or not, to feel like, well, boy, we better do this. I think not to set up that one last meeting. And if the superintendent, whoever there doesn't do it, I have no problem calling some board members and say, hey, will you sit with us and let's
Yeah,
hash
all
this
kinds
out.
of-
Do you
Yeah.
feel doing that again just upsets them more? Because I've heard,
I have to.
like, it's amazing what you hear in the street, and
Yeah.
you hear what you hear. I get that.
Yeah.
But they've had the joint board meetings.
Yeah.
They've been told, you've been told again, and you hear it over and over. And I think,
If it upsets them, it upsets them.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's just
and
fact
that's
of the matter.
fine.
Yeah.
I just feel like, are we pushing them further away?
Jackie, I think the difference is they were told that we're building over here. Do you
Right.
want to be part of that? It wasn't like,
Being jammed down their throat.
That
Yeah.
wasn't any part of the discussion though. We didn't have when we went there, we met with them, we
I'm
didn't
talking
say a
about you. I was
location.
talking about
It was
with
after the
Brands Land, that, because
Yeah.
I was supposed to be part of that sharing and pairing committee. I'd never got to go there, but they were basically told that we're building over here. Do you want to be part of it? And it's like when someone approaches you with that, of course, you're gonna be like, hey, we're not interested in building over there or being part of that way over there. But if you come with a whole different dynamic and say, we're going to start, like he's saying, from scratch. Let's have just a conversation, see where everybody's at. What are the possibilities? Are you open to this? And if it's still like,
So why do we just go one way? Why don't we go both ways?
with
Why only BLHS? Why not RCW?
I think we go both ways.
And you,
I'm just curious if we're gonna do
that's
this.
an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
How
I
about,
agree. I agree.
I wonder if the-
RCW just
if
got
the-
theirs declined too.
I'm wondering if the company that we choose
Yeah, I was just.
can facilitate that process.
Mhm.
Because then it's not one of us, it's somebody brand new. It's somebody that's completely impartial to it. And I truly feel that that's exactly what we're trying to get this company to do.
It's all the strategic planning.
Figure out all of that, figure out the buy-in. What is it that this area wants? And if this area means the Bold school district boundaries, fine. If it means reaching out into the areas and finding out if there's some other
Do you think,
piece.
I'll just use Site Logic, if we use them to
Yeah.
do that first step, and you connect with both school districts, could they help with like shared opportunities? If it's not the big picture, like where can we start today? Like how do we take a deep dive into what can we start doing today to be good stewards of our neighbors? Like how do we share teachers? How do we share curriculum? Again, I'm not in that position to understand. It looks great from my point of view, but it might be horrible. But who can come in and do that? Because I'm guessing it would take a consultant or something to look at some unique patterns.
We do some of it already. Like I know American Sign Language is 4 or 5 different schools. There's a
Yeah.
couple different ones that we already shared.
And that's all
shared
ITV
services.
things.
Yes.
And it's, it's distance learning really.
But when you talk like a curriculum coordinator or
Yeah.
finance director, like
What I think is the answer, there's probably something great out there, but I think it's going to look very different than, it goes back to what I was saying. We've all been to school. It's hard to imagine something completely different. Maybe it's we've got a building that is built that we build in a different town with teachers from a different school district working in that building with our kids. Because if you're going to ship kids all the way to, let's just say Hector,
kids.
you can't, they're not going to be able to get here back. The 4-minute passing time doesn't work between first and second hour. So they're going to miss a big chunk of the day just driving. So ideally you would send them to a place and that's where they would be for that day. So maybe there's, and I'm really thinking outside of the box here, but maybe
Yeah.
there's some way to staff that so that it does work.
Haynesville was combining with mechanics,
Mhm.
the car, because their facility that they remodeled was for auto mechanic and building.
Didn't you have that when you guys were in school? Like where you had
We
like
did.
Danube and
Yeah.
they all
And
came
Hector.
here, you go
Well,
there,
not
right?
NASA we did. but
Fairgrounds,
we had
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
mechanic
We did.
Yeah.
and building a house and.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that,
Do we have that
Trade
now?
stuff. Yeah.
Trade.
but right. I mean,
We
like
don't.
didn't they have all that here? Like that
Well, they
was my
did.
sister's era.
They did it down at Fairgrounds, remember that? We had those buildings rented,
Well,
you know,
they're
built
full,
house and
so.
shops, yeah.
So if you're,
We had
Oh,
I
sorry.
class and all that.
Painesville did that, and New London
Yeah.
kids are coming to Painesville for that class.
That's a hike.
So, yeah, that's a hike,
That's a big hike.
but he did say that.
Well, and maybe you get extra, like you said, it's not an hour class. It's
No,
all of a
they
sudden
were-
it's a
I
half
think-
an
No.
hour.
It'd be block
Yeah.
scheduling, I would
They were a 2.5
assume.
hour
Yeah.
class, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
4 hours, like,
Yeah.
like our RCW does
Back in the
4
day.
blocks.
Right, which
I
makes
think it was
sense.
a 2.5.
Mhm.
So I think, I agree, at some point you have to have a company, but I think at first it just needs to be a grassroots group of us people that go over there and, I mean, assuming they're gonna wanna meet, somebody will wanna meet and talk and say, hey, how about we hire an outside consultant, as you said, to look at all 3 schools. So again, they're coming in very beginning, they're part of the planning process, and I like that idea. But somebody still has to get them on board a little bit, because consultant walks in the door and say, yeah, Bold hired me.
so what if you
Right.
talk to both districts and you say, we're looking at hiring a consultant to do a feasibility study for our demographics? Would you like to be included to look, and maybe maybe they'd be willing to share the cost to look at what the demographics look for all 3 districts. I mean, I don't know how
I
long,
think that's a great idea.
I mean,
I
you're
don't
talking
think
Bellevue,
that-
to Bellevue,
Many
that's a
facilities.
big span. You're talking Bellevue.
but that's
to-
where I go back
to
to,
Stewart. That's
Site
huge.
Logic looks at redrawing districts.
Right.
But the problem with this is, how long is this gonna take? How long
Exactly,
is it
that's
gonna
a-
tie it up? Do we,
We have
Well,
some pretty
my question
immediate
is what-
needs.
We do, and maybe we have to do some repairs, but this has to be a well thought out process, because you can't ramrod this through and make a good decision fast. That's when we're gonna run into mistakes and big errors. It has to be a well thought out process. In the meantime, we do have repairs to make. Maybe we just go ahead and fix our repairs. Like I brought up several times, we're using that gym over in Bird Island steady. We've got tons of stuff going on. We need to repair that roof over there. I don't know. We need to do that. It just has to be done. And then whatever, if there's another roof here, just do it, get it done, because that's peanuts in the whole ball game.
so how do you pay for that?
Right.
We
That's-
have money.
It's big peanuts though.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between, like, there's a 2 or 3 year repair to a roof that Denny, that's expensive. But the difference between that and a 30-year repair, it's certainly more expensive, but which do you do? I'd hate to do
You do a 30-year repair.
you'd have to. But I'd hate to do that and then
Then it gets taken
suddenly,
down.
well, we wish we
I
hadn't
don't
done
think it'll
that.
be taken down.
But if you put,
We
if,
had those
But that's all
standards.
part of the strategic planning.
right.
Yeah. But I don't know that it would be taken down, because we do have Chalkboard Collective.
I'm not talking over there, I'm talking here.
I'm talking
If you're gonna
about-
add on and they're taking a roof away, you just threw money right out the window.
Yeah.
I don't,
But if
I mean,
it's
that's all
right
part,
now,
like you said,
I
it's
think
part of the
these were
strategic
still in
planning.
rotation. That one has been taken off, and that's way overdue. It should be getting done. It's a viable gym. We need a gym. We're probably gonna end up with more than one gym, but until something it's gonna be 2 or 3 or 4 years before anything gets done anyway. So that needs to get fixed, because if we don't do it and the thing collapses or we have some major damage, now that, I'm just saying,
So that's a good point too, is timing. Can the consultant, like, you almost have to do a couple things simultaneously. Like, do you need someone to come in and do a like, if we need a new facility assessment, maybe that should be part of step 1. Because what if we can't wait 3 to 4 years? We really don't know, right?
We can't. I think our first step is get our facility looked at by a company.
Because what if there's,
See their opinions, how we can change it. I'd love to see all the districts combined, but I don't think it's gonna happen. It'd be great. I think it's more
agree.
logical that we're gonna share some classes. There's shares.
I 100%.
I agree with you.
Be great if we combine. That's what I think is logical. At least a high school, we build a high school and all the high school kids go there. And then we have our grade schools in the communities. But I think that's 10 years down the road. So we're forced.
I was gonna say until the state
Somebody's
says.
forced.
yeah.
Yeah, some of it's, I think,
Well, you take the Rhode Island buildings.
Yeah.
I think some of them are gonna be forced. in a
I think
couple
they
years.
are.
they're closing schools in Minneapolis right and left right now.
With the Rhode Island building,
That's-
say that the roof stays an emergency if we leave it go. But even looking at it from that point, from what I know, the heating system is in, I don't know what you'd call it over there, but it's basically shot. So to save to do a roof, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but to do a roof so you don't lose it. If you can't redo the heating system, the roof, because it's worthless anyway. You know, we're gonna find enough money to hurry up and do something with that heating system over there too then? You know what I mean? If we find the money someplace to do the roof, we actually have to do the heating system. Otherwise, you're gonna have a building with a new roof and you're not gonna have a heating system. That heating system is worse shaped over there than it is over here. And that's on last string over there. Some is past that already. It's not even working. So do we find enough money then to at least patch up the heating system, or, you know, at some point, we either have to do that. If we're gonna do the roof because it's emergency, we have to do something with the heating. Or do we just try and bite the bullet and at least get a little bond issue passed and build a gym here so we can cut all the strings of that building completely?
Right.
That's a good option too. Because otherwise you're tied into helping pay for heating bills and whatever else comes up down the road and
You just keep
moving
peeling back
snow
that
and it's just
onion.
no end to it. So
Well,
at
that's-
some point you strings.
cheaper. Repairing that roof and patching the heating, that's a lot cheaper than building a new gym right now, especially if you're gonna do this site look.
Danny,
Just to patch,
is the-
to make that a decent heating system over here, you're just like here, you're talking, between the heating and the sewer lines, you're talking probably $10-12 million. You're not talking 2 or 3 million. You can build a nice gym for 5 or 6 million, so it ain't just peanuts. You start putting those
Well-
figures together.
We could ask Mark over there, he's on the Chalkboard Collective, and to do a major remodel is 7.9, and that's tearing down the old and.
Taking down 3 stories.
Mhm.
Does that include a heating system?
Now, I guess I have a question.
It doesn't.
How old is the new boiler over there? Because the plan was to use that for a period of time.
The boiler's the insignificant parts. The heating system, the newest part of the building is built in 68. You're looking at 50-some years old. That's the new stuff.
It's mainly.
Just all the heat coils and all that and all the air handlers that are all shot. The boiler's just fiddle shit. That's nothing.
You know, my
It's
question
all-
is that $7 million project you guys are looking at doing over there, does that include a new HVAC system?
In the areas that need it, yes. When you take down a 3-story building, you're gonna cut off the electric, the plumbing, the heating.
Well, I know, but in that whole assessment was removing the 3.3-story building. Does it include updating the HVAC system when that one's done?
In those areas that are,
But-
because it goes right through there, so when that's up, then you have to reheat and air cool the rest, the south and the east. Our west is our understanding, according to the assessments that were done, that the HVAC there is doable and the heating is doable for a period of time. Good for the south and for the east, new HVAC. I don't know if that.
It answers my questions. I already know the heat coils just in the gym is over 50 years old. You might say it's doable, but it might be doable today and tomorrow and next week. It might be 2 or 3 years, but they're on their last leg, kind of like we're here. So you're looking at not just patching the roof, you're looking at, you got to do something with the heating. Otherwise, you have nothing. So you got to come up with more than just this. The roof ain't nothing. It's just what you got to come up with all together to keep the building going.
I'm going back to this. Whoever we hire, they need to do this for us. We've got great expertise here, but they do this for a living and they can do it efficiently. And they're going to know, they're going to have ideas that we just don't know.
So, oh, go ahead.
So Danny, so the gym over there, is that just a hot water heat system?
Steam.
Everything's
That's
steam.
Steam
Okay.
coil, 1 unit.
So the west wing that faces to the west, that stretch there,
Steam was.
that's all steam from one boiler.
Yeah.
So couldn't a person just do big forced air heating and air conditioning unit through both of those areas?
You'd be better off going probably rooftop in my mind and putting in your heating up above.
Forced air.
Upward, because then you'd be able to AC and heat both at the same time. The unit that's over there right now, and just to kind of bring you guys up to speed, and I can show you, we can go over there. Probably not today, but the bearings have been slid. Okay, and you got shaft running too on the fan. Well, if you speed her up over about 30 hertz, she'll sit there and she'll jump. That's why when you're in that gym, you won't hear anything and you think it's not running. But in order to fix that, you almost have to open up the wall on the high side, yep, and bring the unit in that way. Even to replace the shaft, you would have to do that.
Okay.
So it's rough. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not lying to you.
Yeah,
That's the
no, I'm
same
not
problem
talking
you got with
about,
Vocation wing, exactly the same thing. You're gonna have to tear the building out to get to it. And no, that, what you're talking about over in Brooke Island, that's the newest part of the building
Right.
right.
by far compared to the rest of the building. So that tells you how much has to be done just to get by.
Well, who's to
Well,
say you
just
can
no
even
end
get
to
those
it.
parts,
Yeah.
you know?
When you start making a list of what actually has to be done just to get by,
It's,
that just gets longer and longer and longer. It's
So-
gonna be the same thing here.
Is there any reason we can't just do a rooftop heating and air conditioner using on it and direct vent air, the gym and that west side? And they're not very big buildings, really.
you could very easily.
I mean, 100 grand.
on the west side, and I guess that's
That
what I've
separates
kind of said all along. If you
Yeah.
put, I mean, you know, you can divide it up. I mean,
Right.
You'd have
You
to
do
have
2 or
some
3
engineer,
units,
yeah.
right? But
but there's no reason why you couldn't do that. The load on the roof and everything like that is fine.
oh yeah,
I
that's
mean,
easy.
That, but
And you're looking at a couple $100,000 tops
Mhm.
to do new air conditioning and heating in that west and north side of that building.
Do we
And
know
then to
what the
re-roof
roof
it
would
plus
cost
the
though?
roof
yeah, it
400.
would be,
to 10 to 15, to a high
I
number.
think you might be a little light, but I mean,
15, throw $15 a square
Yeah.
foot,
At least you're in the hundreds, not a million.
$15 a
Yeah.
square foot, and what's a gym?
Yeah, yeah. It'd be real.
How big
But
is
you'd
the
probably
gym?
want to do all the way down to the lot. I mean, so would
Yeah.
that take care of the locker rooms and
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, you
hallway?
got both stories.
I don't know, really,
How do you get that to?
Your
push
locker
through?
rooms aren't,
No.
yeah.
how many square
But you
feet?
still have to have the heating in the rest of the building working, or else you have to tear the rest of the building down because you have to
Right.
keep the sprinkler systems as long as you use the gym.
Correct.
That's all tied together. You don't have a choice.
That's what I'd say.
So there
Put
you
up-
got, you
put up
got to
some walls.
upgrade all the heating stuff.
So you'd
You
still,
put up a
regardless, even if
wall.
you put up a thing, you'd have.
Unless you say the gym, tear the rest of the building down or something. That'd be very simple too.
So is that something, if we did some strategic work in a facility assessment, we could just focus on maybe that chunk of Rhode Island?
That's what I think we should do. We should have
Mhm.
this facility assessed and
Just,
there, because I'm thinking if we were gonna do something with it, our neighbors, that if we're gonna do a certain college class, I don't know how that all works.
yeah,
But that might be, we might do a room over there. This is where the
Mm.
kids meet. This is where the teacher teaches that class for the day,
Mhm.
for the hours. Because Rhode Island is still our community.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
I think we should include a little bit over there. Should we have kids back over there? Probably not.
but
we are
if the
gonna
goal
need
is
the
to
gym.
salvage the gym,
We're gonna need the gym.
And some of the classrooms on the west side.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
my feeling is if we did build, because I would like to see everything in one location. So if we had enough gym space here, I think they still want a gym. I'm guessing, Mark, they would still want a gym in Bird Island,
I don't want to tear it down.
or not.
Mark wants as much as he can get,
Yeah,
right, Mark?
Well, just being very practical for the group that, that's looking at it. The community need is for the small gym, because we lost Island Hall for, event center.
Mm.
The large gym is pretty much used for something over 4 hours a day, school year, by pole. So for its athletic program, Derek, I mean, you can,
I met with Dale about this when we were first looking at closing the building over there. Can we do everything here? Yeah, we could. Is it good for kids? No. To not have kids practicing till 9 and after at night, we have to have another facility.
Right.
We looked at the armory. It doesn't really, there's only space for one practice floor. Well, so you can't move dance up there because they need to. You can't put, all you can put up there is junior high basketball in the winter. And that's when we're crammed together. So could we physically make everything work here? Yeah. But I'm going to have 10 coaches quit after the first winter because they're going to be here till.
Parents calling
Can't
in
do
and
it.
said,
It's
then you can't do
feasible.
it.
And you
Yeah.
never school with gym space, you're never gonna have enough gym space.
Mm.
There's never
there's
enough
no
gym
such
space,
thing.
multi-use.
And right now, we're using the big gym and the little gym.
Yes.
I guess that's my point. I think we should have somebody look at our facilities and look at that one. I mean, what's our options over there?
Mhm.
Using a gym, maybe using the old gym for, that's where the dance is done. Or maybe that's where the theater is all done, over there.
Mhm.
They have that's their place, it's their theater. I just think there's some options we have.
So do you
Definitely
think-
options.
Step one, just so we understand where we want to go here, is a consultant to do some strategic work to look at demographics, things like that, curriculum, and then also simultaneously be doing a facility assessment.
Absolutely. Yep.
And do we use the same consultant for that? I don't think it'd be horrible to use the same consultant, because if they're doing the facility
I
study,
think
they're
our
gonna
first step
understand.
with
They
the
know the
other two
space- they should know the
communities
space.
is talk to but they gotta have committees too, I would think.
Mhm.
They're doing the same thing we are, and see if they're interested in sitting down. I'd be interested in sitting down. see what
With
their
who?
thoughts are.
With
Like
who?
Green
the
districts.
facility committees for Renville or for Hector. They gotta.
I don't know that they do,
Hector
honestly.
does.
Hector
Of course
does,
we know.
but like with community members,
They originally did. I can't speak to that today.
I mean, I
know
could
they
ask,
originally-
I could ask Sam and Kathy.
Or whatever group they have, if they want to
Right.
sit down and.
I mean, because
discuss-
this, yeah.
Discuss it one more time.
But I
Right.
think I agree with you. Like, I think like, yep. I mean, I think that until they're forced into it, they're going to want to stay their own entities.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think that we just need to focus on moving forward too.
We need-
So, I mean, yeah, we want to have one more meeting and say we did it, but then we have to say, we've had this meeting how many times now? We beat the horse dead. It's done and we move on.
I don't think it's dead, so to
Well,
speak.
until
think
they're
it's just-
forced,
I
it's
like your
just,
thinking.
How do you think differently
Right.
about it?
Start little.
Yep.
steps, Little
Right.
baby.
Because once
steps.
people
Right.
get a little grasp of something different, it works. Change
Right.
is hard, you know, especially in our rural communities where people are super, super passionate about what's happening, because you don't want to see things leave.
No.
You don't want to see things change. You want to protect what you have. So little by little, if you can show that it's a good thing, and how do you do it together? But
And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle to somewhat include Bird Island in the whole
Mhm.
project, because they are part of the community.
Mhm.
we also need
They
to
want
not forget about Lake Lillian. I mean,
Oh, what?
Lake Lillian, because like when you said we should, then
But that's
that
already
goes
gone.
to, I get that, but then that goes to, if we want to make sure that we're including Bird Island and making sure that we have something there, then with that being said, if we're making sure that that's a study, then we need to also do something in
but
Lake
maybe
Lillian.
that's simple as putting a playground. When we do something, maybe it's like
Well,
needs a new
right, but that's what
playground.
I'm saying. Like we can't just say this
Yeah.
is a Rhode Island Olivia thing.
You're
This
not gonna
is a,
put building.
this is a,
essentially.
well, right, but I mean, we have to make sure that we're,
I think if you're doing something with Bird Island, it's closer to Lake Lillian, you're drawing a little bit that way. But to think that you're gonna do something with the building up there, I don't think it's gonna happen, but maybe like you said.
Yeah, that's where I say, you know, it's a
Yeah.
a gesture to
to
say
include
you're
them
part
in.
of our process. We know you have a large population of younger children. We want to help, you know, give them active play or something like that.
So I'm going to point out we're an hour in. We've got an hour left. I'll say it again. Whoever we hire is going to do all of this for us. We're going to tell them this is what we need. We want to know. We want to know if our neighbors want to pair up and do this stuff. We need you to help us do that.
facilitate that.
I personally feel it would be better having an impartial group like this coming in and trying to facilitate that, because there aren't any preconceived notions. There aren't any, well, I never got along with her, or, you know, whatever. It's a completely neutral group that can take this on, and they've got experience doing it.
So do we have recommendations, like which consultants we'd want Jim to follow up with to see if they offer this? Like, does Wold decide, I mean, or do you just go back to Site Logic?
I guess the only recommendations we have is that a board member that we talked to of this, that you say Logic. REA Morton, I guess I had to know somebody that's on the board, Renville, that they use there.
Maybe we pick like, I mean, again, I'm, as Randy said, like there's so much information. How do you know? Do you just pick a couple and say, go see if they do this? If they don't do it,
Right.
We don't need them right now. Or maybe in fairness, since they all submitted something, do you send them a quick email and say, you know what, we had a great meeting. We wanted to work on strategic planning and facility assessment. Can you do both? Yeah. And like timing wise, like how long does it take? I mean, yeah,
Cost is
yeah,
big.
clearly.
Cost is big.
To me, Site Logic is one, RA Martin is one, and probably the one at the Little Vassal. Would be another one to see if they do that.
And maybe Wold too. Again, I'm
I
partial
don't
to
think-
Wold.
well,
I don't know if they do it or not.
Yeah, I'm fine with, I know these guys, if that's who did Haynesville, we were really impressed. We walked to that old school. I mean, it did not look like an old school. And then, boy, people were proud. They had a community meeting there. I mean, or a community event there, and there's a lot of people there. And yeah, it looked nice, even down to painting some of the old
It's
brick
amazing.
Tile.
walls and tile. I mean, it made all the difference in the world on some of that stuff. But
just to make a
But I'd say-
updated.
somebody picks another one, Jim or the board or whoever picks some other company or Wold, whoever it is. But
I will say I was impressed with, and I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm doing it. I was impressed with Kraus Anderson. That's not the company that said that they would come in and potentially do something for free to start off, but they were down at, I saw videos from the project they're currently doing, I think, in Maple River. And what I was really impressed when I was listening to them is they so much of this building is prefab concrete, and they used a local concrete fabricator to do all this. And the story that I really liked was the school wanted this huge window, bigger than this, and they gave them the specs, and the company said, we can't do that. We can go this big. We can't go this big. And they pushed them, and they said, well, figure out how to do this big. And this little company, I think they're out of Wells, did it. They figured it out. And I love the fact that working with that local company, they not only supported the local business, but they made that company better by challenging them. So I thought that was really cool. Closure Nexus took me out for dinner. So I need to say that. So
Yeah.
I don't want
Clearly it's
anybody
on your
saying,
mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not making this decision. No, come on out. Okay.
Nexus was also one that worked with Painesville School.
Okay.
Oh, they did too.
Yeah. They're-
Okay.
I suppose a different phase of their projects,
What's that?
different projects maybe.
Different part of the project, I suppose.
That's just it. There's so much information here to go through.
Yeah, I know. It was overwhelming.
And for me, I was like, oh, I know that project. I don't like that. Nope. Or, oh, I like that project. That one's good.
Mhm.
Right.
Um, So I had to read them a couple times just to process
Site
it.
Logic and Nexus, I think, were the only two that basically just do schools. I think that is an advantage. You know, they got to learn something. And
Nexus made it very clear in their
Yeah.
presentation that they were
Yeah.
just strictly
I
K
think
through
those are
12
the only
schools.
two that actually just basically strictly do schools.
And obviously that's that company needs to come in and listen to our teachers and what our teachers and staff and superintendent needs. I mean, you guys are the one that obviously,
The Nexus is one of the companies that came here for a tour of the building too.
and I just make it really plain. And so there's no doubt in their mind that this is the only phase we're hiring you for,
Mhm.
you know, and
So they came after we sent this a questionnaire to them, and then they came, or what?
Yes.
And Site Logic did? correct?
Yep. Site Logic
Mhm.
did, RA Morton did, and Kraus Anderson did.
And Wold has been here.
And yeah, Wold didn't, but they've worked with us a lot, so I don't think they probably felt they needed to.
I think, to me, the four that we should look at for just the facility part of it is Site Logic, RA Morton, said, what do you say, SDR,
ATSR.
and Nexus. Those four, we should send a email or however you want to handle it.
Okay.
Saying, are you interested, but you guys, anybody else you want, interested in that part of it,
And does,
sitting down with us.
he should ask too about like, what would it cost to do a facility assessment and
You said, okay, I want to make sure I check this off right. Site Logic, ATSR, RA Morton, and Nexus.
That was the four I had written down.
Does anybody
and
have
then we
another
talked
one?
about cross.
Yeah, if you
talked
talk to
about-
them and you like, I
And
mean,
then
I'm fine either way. I don't,
Well, it doesn't,
Doesn't mean
or,
we're not
or why
using
can't,
it for
why
small
can't we
part.
just send something to all of them and say,
Well,
this is what we're looking for?
it's interesting you say that because I do remember them talking, they work with a lot of different architects and they did mention ATSR, yeah. That they worked with.
You know,
quite a
worst
bit.
case, he sends it to all of them and just.
That's what I say. Send it to all of them and see who will just,
Because you never,
I just
somebody
thought we
might,
should narrow it down a little bit.
yeah.
I think out of respect for everyone, our time, for their time,
Well, we didn't talk about LHB, so I think we could just, nobody said anything about them, so I'd for sure not
sorry,
include them.
LHB.
cross them off your list.
And Haslin and Bradley, I mean, I think at least
And
Like-
some-
nobody even brought them up.
and somebody here has to spend a lot of time with them going through the facilities. That's
Mhm.
part of it. I mean,
Yeah, how many tours do you want to do?
We don't care. We're fine with that.
So what were the four? I have SiteLogic, ATSR, Nexus, and who else?
Are you more?
All right,
Are-
yep.
Are the
Are
four
EA
I
Martin?
recommend just for doing the facility assessments. Just that.
Yep.
All we're looking
And we don't even know if they'll do that.
at. We don't.
And then I think you get it down to 2, and then we
Mhm.
ask them for some sites we can go visit, old,
I
you
like
know,
that too.
schools that are
That's
I
what we-
think-
remodeled.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's, I mean, I don't want to say what schools, but there's some projects I look at and I'm like, what a waste of money. Like it is a horrible disaster of a maze and the millions they spent. I'm just
Yeah.
like,
I think RCW's was a waste of money. You,
Sure, I
there's,
can't.
well, there's no gym space, there's no seating space. When we played when the 2 fire departments, Bold Fire Departments and RCW Fire Departments took up, you had to stand.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
like,
a new gym.
yes, it's like, there's
I just
maybe
think
5 rows of bleacher. That's it.
they're
It's sad.
they're doing what they can do, but I think sometimes the after effect is just not.
Yeah.
And there's a few projects that I would,
Do you have any off the top of your head that you?
yeah, I wouldn't say them in public. Sorry.
Well, it's fine.
I mean, I think
Project.
it's my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
that's-
feel,
That's what we're here for, everybody.
yeah, I just feel like if you're gonna do it, you don't want to create a maze. You want it
No.
to be seamless for your students, your parents. I go back to when we host our youth tournament for wrestling here after Christmas, and parking, entrance, concessions, the whole, like when you bring people to your school and you know, they're coming from all over the 5-state area, you want to kind of showcase that. And I think as we've started this process, when we go through that tournament, there's days I just literally want to climb in a hole because we can't accommodate that. And it's embarrassing and
Mhm.
and you feel bad, and it is what it is. And that's, you know, we can look forward, but you want to be able to give people a good experience.
Yes.
Same with when people come to games, like you want them to be able to find their way. You want your students to be able to have a clear path on how to get places. So when you create a maze by adding on,
A gym way 50 yards, 50 million.
having to go
yards
up
back,
the steps, down the steps to the left to get to a
Right.
classroom of just 2 or
Granite Falls
3.
seems that way.
What's that?
Granite Falls School.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Go up, it doesn't-
I would say
Yes.
Silver Mountain seems a little bit like that too.
Yeah.
Their gym and their addition.
So we kind of have a few things if we're going to try to move stuff
Yep.
along in general. So if we try to hire or pick a couple of those companies to do that at the same time, that immediate need situation where, so Danny, and this comes to you. I mean, to me, the immediate needs are do we have roof leaks in Olivia that are leaking today that we need to get fixed? Maybe the old north part of the school, I would say anything else should be considered more than a 3-year fix. I mean, that's maybe one you consider.
You- Okay, we had, Jim and I sat down. We have a 3-year, I don't know, did you send anybody?
Nope.
We can save about $100,000. There's 3 roofs. Bird Island is included in on this, a gymnasium, and I call it the old hip roof. And then in to the part that they're gonna tear down or would go down. That kind of ties into that section. And then it would be the 99 addition and over the ag part. If we go a single year project, it's 1.388 or 66. 1.350. If we do this in 3 separate years, it's 1.455 million.
You do it in 3.
Yeah,
3
but
years.
well, yeah, there'd be 3 roofs that would need it. The gymnasium over in Bird Island could go another couple of years, but I don't want to push that out because we've already pushed it out
Hmm.
2 years. I'm getting to the point where I really don't trust that. The 99 edition here, we have to. I mean, we don't have any choice. It's starting to pull in. The rubber's starting to shrink, pull the sides in. The roof over the ag wing, what I would call the ag wing, the south half was done, and then they didn't carry all the way through. That was supposed to be that next year's project. That roof should be done. We've had a lot of repairs done on that, but it's just temporary. So as far as the roofs, I would say those 3 are our major.
Need
Where-
to get done. And I'm sorry, so going back to Bird Island, that figured, how much was just Bird Island for the gym?
Yep. It'd be the.
How much money?
How much is it just for the gym in that area?
How much money?
Oh, just for the gym in that area, that is right at, what did he have figure here? 450,000.
Does that have a square foot number on it? I mean, the total
Uh,
square feet to do it, just says gym.
And how long ago did we have that done, Denny? That was, I bet you this is,
That one was done.
no. How long ago did we have this
The quote,
assessment
Oh,
done?
That's
this
pretty
is just the last month.
Oh, we've got a new one. Okay.
That's just for the gym over there?
We do stuff around here.
No, they do not.
Okay.
I think he said the
That's
gym
good.
and then,
Trying to figure square footage on that.
How big is a gym roughly?
Typically a 2-car gym like that's
Must be at least 10,000.
15,000 square feet?
Must be at least 100.
Okay, so if I said 20, that's.
I'd say 50, yeah.
Okay, 15 to 20, okay.
15, 20.
Somewhere.
That'd be-
Would that include the stage?
The other,
Yeah, with his
the other one,
20.
I don't know how you'd figure that, right? Because
Because that's all
that
over the
hump,
place.
Yeah, and then it kind of fades off over the top into that other piece.
So just the
Include
cost,
Lower
of-
part too there for that whole,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's all the same age.
how about the old gym?
That's part of
That's
that.
all
that's
part of
part of
it.
that.
That's part of this too.
That'd be kind of
So
that.
you probably need to up
humpback
your square
or-
footage then, because now you're on a 3
Yeah.
quads.
That old
Plus
gym, would that
stage.
qualify as a historical
Right,
society?
it's
given the
15,000
WPA
just for
built
the
that?
big gym plus everything else.
Yeah, plus
You know,
you gotta think
WPA
your
built
kids-
that, so maybe we could get
So
some
would it
money
be
someplace.
7,500 for the other
I
one,
don't know.
for the old gym?
What?
Seems like
That old,
something,
that old,
Round-
that round roof gym in Rhode Island.
that
Yeah.
sounds like something Mark might.
I wonder if that could qualify
any
as
insight
a
on that?
historical society building, because the WPA built that
footage.
gym.
Yeah.
Square footage
maybe.
on the old gym.
No,
Yeah,
I
The only
was,
thing is, if you get it as a WPA, then if you
Yeah.
want to tear it down, you
We-
can't tear it down either.
right.
Yeah.
We have money in our
I don't know.
board school to do that repair in Rhode Island. We wouldn't have to.
Here's my, and I know I'm gonna be against all of you on saying this. I think, and I know it needs to be done. I don't disagree, but if you look an 8-hour day, we have way more kids here that we need to, like, we have kids here that those roofs are like, if they're dire, that's where I want in my opinion, that's where it needs to be fixed. I mean, gyms, if we have to get by with it, I just, if we don't have a ton of money, there's not a ton.
No.
So if we have to stick money into roofs, I don't know. That's just my opinion. I know I'm going against everybody else, but
But
that's.
No, I absolutely agree. Anything that has a leaky roof needs to get
Well,
fixed.
but I mean, if you're doing education here, I'm sorry, but that's
We
where it needs to be
absolutely have
fixed.
to prioritize
This has to be
this.
But
fixed.
keep in mind that the pot of,
Education's here.
keep in mind the pot of money comes, you know, whether you're building a new school or that, it still comes from the same people.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can't really see.
But I mean, I will tell you, if you're going to ask if I'm going to say education or sports, I'm going to ask parents, they're going to say education.
Right.
They're not, I mean, sorry, Derek,
But-
didn't mean to offend you, but like, I'm just saying, they're going to
I
pick
think that goes
education.
back to what you're saying,
Absolutely. What I'm
and
saying,
that
Jamie, it's
may
the same pot of money.
be some
What do you
I
say?
understand
Don't
that.
spend the money. We're going to build a new school.
unique-
We're still the ones.
Right.
Right, but
So-
I'm just saying, like, if it comes down to where, like, if we have to spend money on roofs, it needs to be where we're educating our children, not
And
where.
then you turn around and want to go out to a referendum to add on, build new, whatever it might be.
I would not be embarrassed to go out and say, we need $2 million to re-roof our school.
No, I think we might need to do that.
That'd be a no-brainer.
And
to
what
me.
Denny is, what Denny's
Done
point
one
here
shot.
is that if we do all of these three at once, we end up saving
It's about 100,000.
about $100,000.
It's a little over.
And that makes sense. They're
Yeah.
here, they do it all.
Yeah.
I think
They'll
if
do a
you
better job probably.
spin it as, you know, we need a short-term fix so we can do long-range
Well,
planning.
and that's part of this. We have to really educate people that this is short term. I mean, it's a long-term roof. I'm not saying we're gonna do this short-term roof, but this is just part of a larger solution, and we're gonna still have to come back to you. We're gonna need your help in the future. But this is just gonna get us started.
I think if you could have that strategic plan done before you had to go back to
Yep.
voters,
I think so.
it just
Well,
would
that's they'll have to help you with that,
chronologically
like,
be
yeah,
a
Yeah.
better process.
These people are good at doing
what they do.
what they do, and part of that is this strategic planning. And I'm fully confident, as I started off the day saying, I'm not worried about any of these. I think they all can do a good job for us.
Yeah.
I've got these four.
I want you to add that one that you were impressed
I've
with.
got these five.
Yeah, who was that?
That Carlson or C.
Kraus Anderson.
Kraus Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't strictly do schools, but they've got their website's kind of fun to look at. They've got all kinds of videos and pictures from just, I don't know, hundreds of projects, it seems. Well, at least hundreds of videos. I shouldn't say hundreds of projects.
So Danny, I'm sorry to come back again. So if we did all of Bird Island you're talking about, that number was like 1.35.
No, 400 for Rhode Island.
I think if you add all three of them, it was.
Was-
1.2.
With the
One-
other.
yes,
Yes, all
together.
three roofs was
1.3 was all three.
Okay.
1.3887 or something.
And Bird Island included more than just the gym. It was that
Yeah.
whole hip roof
Yes.
part of the gym that in
Yeah.
between.
And then,
Got it.
and see if that third story comes down, I don't know how they'd tie that in.
I don't either.
How they make that roof.
Yeah.
Got it.
That would be something that they'd,
So generally speaking, that area over there in Rhode Island, would you see a problem on the west side, the whole gym area and the whole west side doing nice rooftop, vent, no boiler, air, heating and air conditioning units on the roof and ducting it in?
That's, I wouldn't even mess with doing anything with the heating over there. Or,
Units on and it'd be done.
yeah,
I think.
have the old,
Yeah.
Then you could build some divider walls that are really exterior walls between what we're saving and what we're not saving.
Mhm.
And the old area is sectioned off until it could be taken down or whatever happens.
you know, we need locker rooms. I mean, you know, they're pretty rough there. You can vouch for that. I mean, we can get those by. I mean, say that.
The
But-
locker rooms over there, we can use the gym as a practice facility without locker rooms. I know when I've talked to Mark, it's been more, if you want to make a push to have events in Rhode Island, bring people into Rhode Island, then we need an additional locker.
Right.
We need the space.
So maybe those old locker rooms get leveled off and filled in and some of the first classrooms on the west side become new locker rooms. Nice big wide open rooms.
Changing.
Or the stage area.
yeah.
But
That was
Denny,
a-
who gave the bid for the roof? Who was-
That was Sue Garland, Garland Company. They, we signed with them, I don't know, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And that's who I've kind of gone through. Brian Thompson is his name. He's a pretty good guy, straight shooter. I mean, he kind of came up with this bundle, if you want to look at it that way. And then I thought, yeah, okay, whatever, give me the numbers. Well, then when there was $100,000 in savings, I kind of thought, this is kind of dumb if we don't look at
That's
this.
huge.
I mean, but you got to understand too, they're on site. They got work for their guys for a year. I mean, you know,
Right.
it's a plus to them too.
Have we got a quote from any other company?
Didn't you do Granite City
Um,
before?
He's the one they're the company that's been doing all our roofs. They do a 20-year basically bumper to bumper. And then they come in and they recoat and that gets you another 10 years. So it's 30 years total. So, and they do a really good job. I mean, you can look at the roofs that are up there. They replace the insulation. They
Denny
bring
took me
their
around-
R
He
value.
took me around up there, and pointed out the
You can
Garland
tell the
roofs.
difference.
Yeah,
And they slope everything to the drains.
So the 20-year, after the 20-year recoding,
That I've never asked Brian.
no, I mean, that's on top of whatever they're gonna.
Yes,
Extra
right,
cost.
yeah. It's, I mean, you seem pretty upfront.
Well, if it's 450, they're doing more, just the gym is 15,000, so they're probably doing 30,000 square feet or something over there.
That's, yeah, I would bet. It's kind of hard with that,
Guess-
with that
guess
one
maybe.
rough to figure.
All right.
But yeah, I would say, yeah, 30 to about 35,000.
we'll ask the calculus class.
I can ask Brian, he can bring it up. And I mean,
That'd be good. But it sounds like it's in the ballpark anyway. I mean,
yeah, well, and I figured, square footage, God, I can't remember. He was right in the general. I mean, you know, he was a little on the higher side, but I mean, for the roof they were getting there, I mean,
You don't remember
They're
what was
decent.
the price per square foot?
what's that?
You know the price per square foot if you did the whole project.
I can't remember what he was at. And when he did it, he just said it and I jotted it down and I thought I had it, but I don't because you guys asked. But he was right in kind of the middle of the road on the higher side. So,
Usually if you stay with,
13, 15.
like now, with one company like that, and down the road, 10 years after you do a roof, if you stay with one company, you can call them up and they're gonna come in and take care of the problem.
well, and that's.
See, when I was here, every time we did a roof, they put it out on bids and they always took the cheapest and you get what you pay for.
Mhm.
And whenever we had a problem, tried to find who did that roof because we've never used the same person twice, you know. There's a real big advantage in sticking with one person, and you got a problem, you call them up, they know exactly what you're talking about, and the roof you're talking about, and they'll back up a warranty, you know, and it's worth a lot of money. I mean, it's worth it quite a bit, put it that way.
Yeah.
That's a really nice thing you're doing. I couldn't get them to do that.
That-
We always just went for the cheapest.
That company that came out, that was when I first started here. We had a leak over in Bird Island and I asked the foreman if he'd go over and take a look at it. He said, yeah, he goes, we can do that. He ran over with a couple guys that looked at it. I didn't know they patched it. I figured they just went and looked at it. We never did get a bill on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Really?
They were here. I mean, so that held a little bit with me.
Customer service.
One thing I want to say to you guys too, when we're talking like the 99 edition and the roofs and I mean stuff like that, and I got bids on this stuff too, but like the windows, the fascias, all that stuff has to be kind of looked at too. I know Matt Zubke's room, Jim, your room is bad too, where the sills set down in there. I know Matt, if he sets papers on his window and we get a hard south wind, papers blow off. I mean, you know, we went out and caulked them. But it's just, it's.
I think all that will be addressed if the
Mhm.
project moves forward as they
Yeah.
model.
It would,
Everything's got to be brought up to
Yeah.
standard,
But-
I think.
But that goes back to
Like-
the facility assessment.
Ah.
Back to the facility assessment.
Mhm.
and before I go any further, I mean, if we can get this through, that'll save on our LTFM. And if we do get this money, the LTFM money, improvements in this 99, the windows, the doors, that stuff, because we have to keep up on it. I mean,
But how far do we want to go?
Well, right.
And that's why
But
I'm
I
saying.
mean, Jackie,
Yeah.
look at,
because-
we're already, how many years in?
Yeah.
You know, like if it doesn't pass again,
And
I think
Well-
that's a good point too, is as you go through that strategic planning session and, you know, if it doesn't pass, then what?
mhm,
Like whatever happens and you take it back to the voters and it fails.
That's why you.
Clearly-
Better have a good roof on our
Yeah.
old building.
That's what I was gonna say.
But yet they're gonna argue the opposite. Why'd you spend all that money? Now it passed. I mean, it's.
well, they
Yeah, but
argue
it's
that
just-
with the
but they're-
parking
they're
lot,
a
they,
circle.
you know,
They're wanting their tax dollars. They bought these buildings. They want these buildings maintained. And if we don't show that we can keep maintaining these buildings and just waiting for a hope and a prayer and a wing and a prayer, that's not showing them good stewardship of our buildings. We need maintain our buildings,
Yeah.
period, whether they're old, new, whatever. It's money you stick into it anyway, and that's just the way it is, like your old car. You have to have tires.
But they're not gonna agree with that if you spend millions on a roof either. It's just, if you can do the planning and put plans in place, I think.
These roofs, like the one in Bird Island, has been taken out, should have been done.
Yeah.
Even before they closed the building, it was supposed to be
Right.
done, and they chose.
There was no money.
But we're here today,
Yeah.
so
Go
we
out for
focus
it.
today and
We're
moving
fixing it.
forward. And those that don't believe in gym space are gonna argue it again too. So
Right.
it's how do you just find that plan to move ahead and to educate the community, possibly the best that you can do. I mean,
You're never gonna get everybody on. board.
no, it's
No.
all about
For sure.
educating and really, showing that you have a plan in place. Like, here's our next 3 years, or, here's what we're gonna do with curriculum. It's taking what you heard from the last vote and trying to
Make it better.
communicate that better.
Even if we don't need that building eventually, say they do build a gym here eventually. The taxpayers did pay for that, so no matter what happens to that building, whether it just becomes part of the community of Bryan or whatever, if we don't need it eventually,
It's a value.
At least to give 'em
It's a
something that's-
value to
give them something
Yeah.
that's
absolutely
useful. like
versus something we have to
Have
pay
a
to take
decent
down.
roof on it, you gotta
Yeah,
have the
'cause
roof
that's not cheap.
and
either.
heating,
Right.
so.
So, spending 60 million on a new school, 2% interest for 1 year pays for that roof.
Yeah.
That's about 1.2 million or better.
And it is a nice
2%.
gym. I mean, it just, you just don't want to lose something like that. It's kind of like tearing the Metro down. To me, it was just unbelievable. Tear a building like that down, you look at what we're working with out here. That should have been saved. They could have built some other place.
Absolutely.
It's just, that's unbelievable. I don't think we need to follow the same as what they do down there.
So to that argument, if someone brings up the argument, spending over $1 million on a roof, that's less than the interest is on a new facility for a year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's,
It's all.
if anyone cares about any,
Well, absolutely. But I tried to communicate too, like, cause I was obviously for it. Right. And so when I had someone say to me, well, I can't afford that. I'm like, what do you pay? You have 5 people on your cell phone plan. I know what I pay. It's way less in a year than what you pay in a month. So it's all on people's perspective and how they want to take it too. I mean,
I think
that's
it's-
just,
Just
The
what do
bottom
we
line
want?
is we just do have so much money to work with. That's the.
absolutely. And that's the
problem.
unfortunate part.
But you have to have plans in place.
Right.
You have to do.
Well, I mean,
to
and that's
have-
like when people bring up the parking lot, I'm like, listen, that was before my time. I had nothing to do with that.
But I
And
was
But
that's
it's
like
here-
no
not-
different than talking about the roof right now.
I
when
know,
I was here,
but
we
that's-
worked
I'm
on
just
that parking
saying.
lot
It's a
year
little
after
more-
year for
a little more
10 or
needed,
15 years.
right?
And we could never find it in the budget to do that parking lot. And we knew it. We talked about it. Every year we talked
Almost
about it.
lost
We
my
don't do it
tire
pretty
in
soon,
that
we're gonna
parking
lose it.
lot.
We just couldn't find the money. And of course, eventually they did lose it. But, it comes down to, well, if we do that parking lot, are we gonna lay off another teacher? Or,
Absolutely.
and that's where we're at now today too. It's just, it's unfortunate, but
Hindsight's
think putting-
2020.
The positive perspective, like what can we do with our curriculum? What can we help
Yeah.
our teachers with? What can we provide for our students? Put on it, the
Right.
rest of this other stuff will fall into place because people will be focused on
That's a good
priorities.
point.
And that's why it's a little hard to do a facility before you do what we should curriculum and what we should have. You know what I mean? Because
But if you don't
Doesn't-
have the room to do it, it makes it hard to do a curriculum. Like right now, you couldn't do auto mechanics in here. There's no space.
But
right, but that's what they would tell us, and then we'd say, okay, if we want to do that, we
But they
need to
did
have a
tell us
building.
that. I mean, that was all part of it. Like I said, I wanted to go back to like when it was, and this was way before my time. No offense.
are they bringing that back?
I
Vocational and that?
would love
There's been a lot
to.
of talk
Here-
about it.
here-
I would love
We would
to.
love to.
We
Here's
need
the
to grow
problem.
our own.
There
Yeah.
aren't any teachers. There aren't any teachers out there.
Okay.
And the few that there are, I've got a friend of mine who's a fantastic CTE teacher, and he had been at Glencoe, and Shakopee is paying him $92,000 a year to do it out there. Well, how do we compete with
Right.
that? Nobody's graduating with these degrees in teaching anymore. And then you got the metro schools and he lives in not Lester Prairie, tiny little town over by Lester Prairie. I can't think of the name of it.
Windsor?
Winstead. Yeah. Cost of living in Winstead is not probably that high. Works out great for him.
Wednesday's a booming town.
Yeah.
It is now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Lots of
It is.
business.
Yeah. I lost my whole camping spot at Winstock to a business.
I think too, when you talk about technology and trades programs, I mean, you look at Redwood, they just added on a tech center. Hutch
Mhm.
has one, Wilmer has one. Like, open enrollment's a big thing.
It
Like,
is.
we
It's
want to
way
keep our
big.
kids here, and
Yeah.
we want. I mean,
No, I
we know
agree.
that we're looking for welders. We know that we're looking for mechanics. We know that we need, tech and trade programs are huge. Businesses, I'm pretty sure, would be willing to help support that. It's just how do you educate them what they're doing
Mhm.
and how? I mean, kids could come out of high school ready to go into the workforce,
Mhm.
and we need that in our rural communities.
Well, not every kid is set up for college, right? Like,
Well,
how
Yeah,
many? Yeah, it is. Like, well, yeah. I know a kid that actually went to college and he's making like $40 an hour welding. And I'm like,
Yep.
you're what? You're 21. He's like, yep.
Maybe,
That's why
maybe you'd
my
like to
mom
come and
is-
teach it for 40,000 a year.
but
But he doesn't have a 4 year.
that's just
degree.
one program. There's
I was being
multiple
sarcastic. He's been
career
way
paths
more
that these
than
kids can explore before they take off.
Right.
How is Redwood's program doing?
The last I heard, it was
Flourish.
going well. I haven't checked in for a little bit, so I look at you because you're down there more. But
Yeah.
Sizes, I mean, for students, are they getting kids to take these classes? I mean, you can build a facility, but you still got to have the teacher
yeah,
and you got to have kids that want to take it.
from what I understood, that wasn't the issue. But they're competing with open enrollment,
Yeah.
just like any other school.
I heard a lot of kids from Fairfax went there.
Yeah,
I know at least 4 families.
That's a
I
good
know-
question to find
I
out.
know
I'll
Hank
ask.
down there, he's
I haven't
the
heard
instructor
recently.
For a lot of that stuff, and he's been there 10, 12
Yeah.
years or whatever. He does a pretty good job. I mean, as far as setting it up, I've walked through it about 3, 4 times, and that would be really nice to have that here with an instructor, because
Mhm.
it's,
And they had huge support from
Mhm.
businesses.
Absolutely.
They had a very generous donor.
Yes.
yeah.
One thing we could do is we could look at expanding the ag program, because so much of the career tech ed stuff falls under the ag licensure.
Mhm.
And like our new teacher this year, she would be more than happy to go out and learn how to do this stuff. She's not a welder, but she went and got welding training.
Yes.
Now she's not going to make you a new trailer or something, but she's willing to learn, and we can find ag teachers that would be willing to learn if we want to expand that program.
I do think looking at curriculum, and I say curriculum very loosely, like I know you guys know your curriculum, what you want to see, but just from my perspective, how does, doing a strategic plan, how does it help recruit teachers to our community? Because that is something I hear day in and day out from all 3 districts is, they're not so afraid of the student population, it's the teaching, like getting people to move here. Housing is an issue. You're not seeing the applicants you normally would see when you have openings. So how do we begin to attract people to want to come here too?
Well, Jackie, that's part of it. Like, I mean, you did tours, right?
Mhm.
For doctors.
Yeah.
What was one of the things they said about our schools?
Yeah,
They're old and dingy.
Mhm.
So, I mean, honestly,
And it's
I-
just a perspective.
Right.
Again, you drive by, you don't go through.
but they
it
did
is-
come and tour, didn't they?
No, we didn't go inside.
Okay.
We just went through because they weren't here during the day. But again, it's just perspective. Clearly you can help coach through like the benefits and the good staff and what we are doing. But I think too, when you look at from a standpoint of staffing your schools, if we don't have teachers, we don't have curriculum.
Right.
So it takes the whole community.
Yeah.
It takes, when you talk about these ag programs, I'm sure there's businesses that would be willing to partner because they can't find staff.
Yeah.
So if they can help invest in a program or accountants or healthcare, or, I think it's just thinking differently. It's not school as we knew it growing up.
Even with ag programs, you don't even have to look within the district. Go out of the district and look for help because they're all looking.
Yeah.
Electricians. and
Yes.
they're all looking.
Mhm.
Farm workers.
Yeah, the list just goes
Diesel
on.
mechanic.
Dental, like the list is just on and on.
I
Tech
do have a
programs.
question. On the is there any decision what's happening with the pool?
I've not had any discussions on the pool.
What do you
Staying?
mean?
Is it going?
Oh, I don't,
That would all have to be part of that. Like, what you have to remember is, when we talked about joining, that wasn't part of it because of the cost, but that would all have to be part of the strategic planning and what the wants are.
And I
But who
think
maintains it now, the city?
right now the city.
I think you'd have to involve them because
Absolutely.
they're very passionate
It's
about it.
I would
usable
say
now.
if-
It's being used now.
Yeah.
Are there
If
issues?
they were to turn it
Yeah.
back over to us to pay for half of
We
it,
couldn't afford it.
we couldn't do it.
No.
And I wouldn't,
That's to me is part of planning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because to me, if we can't do it, and they're gonna turn it, if they would turn it back, that would make a great shop for the ag program. Put a couple, some windows, doors, big doors
Yeah.
there. That's huge. You
Yeah.
can build a house in there.
Yeah. You're gonna get some phone calls
Just
now.
saying.
Yeah.
But
Our doors are open.
It is
Sell
important
your
that we
swimsuits
teach our
and buy
youth
them.
swimming lessons.
And that's,
Now, there will be people that are very passionate on the opposite side of the spectrum that says
Oh,
with how
we
being,
need a pool.
we need it, yeah.
And we
And
need
so,
to teach our younger ones how to swim.
I-
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Life skill.
I-
So-
I'm saying we should close the
The
pool,
heating,
but if it
that's
gets thrown back,
Just
and
It
yeah,
comes with a
it's
financial-
schools, we can't take
yeah,
care of it.
we wouldn't be able to.
Right.
Similar to what just
What was it?
RCW went through. They threw it back to
$250,000
their voters because their
They
school,
went to DB fire and all that?
it
That
didn't pass.
was.
Who?
RCW's.
280.
RC, oh yeah, they didn't, yeah.
So now what do they,
That's what
What
has
do
to
they
be
do
done.
with
For their pool?
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah, they don't.
can't do it.
Yeah. so
Like, what-
will they really close it?
Yeah.
Knows what.
Well, that's.
And theirs is
another
an
thing,
outdoor
maybe
pool.
All three communities need to join together and build one pool.
Good luck.
I know.
It costs a lot.
I guess the one thing about egg program, Wilmer must have a pretty good egg program.
Mhm.
We have about half a dozen guys working for us now that are 17 to 21 years old.
That's
They're all
awesome.
making very good money, but this one 17-year-old kid came down, he's in high school up there and had never driven truck before, not associated with any equipment operation stuff, but they share some stuff with the college and they have a truck driving simulator.
I heard that.
Yeah.
So this-
yeah,
And they
so-
can go out of there and make 80, I mean, if they want to go just drive truck, dang.
So this young guy came down and he said, I'm not sure I want to do it after college. And he talked to her. Well, my son Sawyer kind of runs our site out here. And he said, I haven't really driven truck whatever before. And so I said, well, hop in. Sawyer said, you just swore that kid been driving truck for 6 months already.
That's so
Really?
cool.
He shifted, he drove around the mile. He said, oh my God, the thing must really be.
And don't
those
they-
simulators
Yeah,
are
Yes.
more of a
mobile.
simulator.
Yes.
And they're mobile.
Yes, they're,
Yeah.
yes.
The thing must
And
be
don't they
really
help
accurate.
them as well? I believe they're also helping them with their CDL. Because let me tell you, my husband struggled. Like he goes, I mean, I know people that were like, oh, CDL 5 years ago, it was a breeze. It's not anymore.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah. So I think I heard they actually help them like what to study and quiz them so they can get their CDL.
In their program, and you get it right in
Yes.
college. I suppose they take
Yeah.
it in college, you get it right there. But I suppose they obviously have bigger numbers to pull from, but they're building a pretty nice program for
Hmm.
those types of projects.
I was gonna tell you, if you want to close the pool, we got a cost last year to redo the heat in the pool. It was 280,000.
Let's stop talking about closing the pool.
Yeah.
My email is going to fill out.
Yeah.
But just that tells you what it's going to cost to upgrade the building, because we know the heating, that's getting bad over.
How much?
Put a
did
new,
it cost?
a new heating,
A
new
new
heating with a
heating cost?
dehumidifier, 280,000, but that's what needs to be done, just for the pool.
I'm just saying all options should get,
I agree.
because
I'm just not saying
if you're
that. on
not
camera.
able to say, if the city's not gonna spend 280,000,
Yeah.
and the school sure as heck ain't gonna probably do it, what's your option?
That's just the heating for one small area, you know, that's.
A pool is more important than a roof.
But
I mean, but you know what I'm saying?
But
Like,
this is going back to what I keep saying, whatever company we go with, they're gonna be able to find this out. They're gonna find out, you know what, having this pool is super important to this community. And you should look at levying extra money to support that.
Yeah.
And if that's what the people want, then that's what we should do.
It's a
If not
double-edged
what
sword.
they want, then we should.
Well,
Jim, I kind of agree with you, but I think that you need those people. But I think we gotta, tell those people what we want. We need to have a hand on
Oh,
what the community
absolutely.
wants.
Yeah.
So no matter what they come in and I mean, obviously you use their advice, but at the end of the day, we say, hey,
Yeah.
and that's where, and I know COVID was part of the problem last time. We couldn't have all those open meetings and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But
just
I
that.
think that would be a big part to say, all right, here's the actual cost. If you want this area, this is what it's going to cost to do it. And we put
When
it
I
out
was
to-
here, I had several times with, we had people in for whatever reasons and, they just said, they looked at me and said, community this size can't afford a pool that size, can they? I said, we got one. No, I told them we shared with city of, we just said that, I've heard that quite often. And just couldn't believe how a community this size could have a pool that size,
And
So it
that's
is really
interesting.
fortunate to have
Well, it
that.
is. Hector's been trying to do fundraisers for theirs. Like
Yeah.
they didn't even have theirs open this summer.
Yeah.
So now if RCW loses theirs,
And I don't know if they're,
Or
our
they're-
is so bad that they can't open it anymore.
yeah, I
Texas is
don't
So
know.
bad, it's shut down by the state, I think,
I know
because
they were
it's so bad. but I
right.
don't know if Renville's, if they can still open theirs next year.
for how long?
But they were planning a total remodel with the slide and all that
Mhm.
stuff. Got shut down.
So do you take a recommendation from the group on what the group would like to see, or what do you, what is
Take
our
to the board.
purpose?
Yeah, so what do you want exactly me to ask these people to show us?
We want price. That's first and foremost. And if they'll give us just where they can come in and do an assessment, it doesn't mean that they'll get the job. It's just strictly an assessment.
I guess I would tell them right now, what we're looking for
Right.
is an assessment of our school
Mhm.
to see what our next steps going forward are.
Mhm.
For the size of enrollment that we have today.
Well, and look at the district boundaries. Look at, I mean,
So I'm
would
gonna
be
be
mediating?
contacting these companies, asking them if they would come in and do an assessment and then make a recommendation to us?
Yeah.
Okay,
The recommendation on the facility that we have right now.
okay.
And we're doing both buildings, right?
Are
I
we,
think that they should include both buildings,
Yes.
whether.
are we paying them to come in and do this assessment?
that's what we're asking,
That's
how
what we're
much the
asking.
cost
What do they
is.
Okay,
charge to
cost
come in
of-
and do that assessment?
And is it a curriculum assessment or a facilities assessment?
It's a facilities
Well,
assessment at this point.
Facilities at this point.
But then they can do, I
Curriculum
mean,
in mind.
Yeah.
how many of
Yeah.
them do the study with the district? Yes, keeping curriculum in mind.
Yeah, keep,
Gotta have curriculum in mind.
Absolutely.
Assessment, I would think.
And we can have a curriculum in mind again, but then it all comes down to, do we have teachers? That's the hard part. And that's where it's like that big snowball effect.
But you
can-
gotta start moving.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't wait.
But my thought is it's a no-brainer, re-roof, everything that needs to be re-roofed.
Yep.
If we gotta put that out
ASAP.
for-
Yep.
We'll,
I don't have the money.
Let's go out for it.
or money to do
You guys
it.
want it at the-
Money.
next board meeting on, what is it, the 20th?
I will not be here. I will be in Texas.
Can you bring that that was the consensus of the committee that we need to put a referendum out to,
You won't get it out. What? It won't be even February because
No.
you're too late.
no.
It would
but
have to be
it would
your
probably-
August.
We would probably do August. And again, whatever we levy, it's for the following year. So if we levy this,
It wouldn't be levy, it'd be referendum.
well, no, this would be a levy.
Repair,
Building
that a
is-
levy or is that a-
No,
Well,
building
a
is,
levy referendum, they're all referendums. But it's, the money we would get isn't for next year. We would get it the
the
following year. So
Mhm.
I don't
So you're gonna
want
put yourself in the possibility of a hole.
We're already in the hole.
there's
But I'm saying
another
it's-
option with some of these facility
But-
like this. You don't have to go to a vote for
Right.
these. You know, we could just do it, and I hate that idea. But
2% increase.
this might be something we can sell to the public and just say, hey, we need to levy this. We're not going to have a vote.
I don't think you can.
I
do
think
it.
they'll go
Our
for it.
roofs are leaking and you turn down a new school today, we have no choice.
Yeah.
But levies for
How do you argue
education.
with that?
I don't think you could do that for,
Can you use health and
Building
safety for roofs net? 'Cause
No,
mold
this isn't
can't do that.
operations though.
no, but
This is building. So, it would be-
I can show you later.
Okay.
I got,
yeah, because I thought that,
Look into that and let us know, but I think, I agree too, we gotta get these roofs fixed as soon as possible.
well, you'd only be at 2% that you could go. And I don't even know if can we at this point when we already have a levy out?
And then I don't want to overstep my bounds, but right now I happen to be looking at new air conditioning, heating units in some warehouse buildings.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with the company now and head them up. I'd have no problem going over to Bird Island if that would be allowed and just walking across the roofs and saying, all right, here's the square feet.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
I mean, is that something?
Just don't fall.
Any about?
Just don't fall.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt.
Sounds like a good idea.
And if you get hurt, no.
I'll see it.
I mean, I think I would talk to Denny first, obviously, calm and,
All right. Is that the route? Should I call Daddy?
Yeah,
Just ask him?
absolutely.
You're
Yep.
okay with that, Jim?
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
And then you kind of have a situation because
I think
Well-
the rooftops in this school would be a good option.
I have the boilers and steam stuff and just,
well, we already have, I mean, the problems underneath, like Denny was showing with the problems with the steam here.
Are they actually looking at, if you're gonna do a complete remodeling, are they looking at switching this building over to hot water heat then?
I don't think that was ever, yeah, I think that was,
That's what it was talking.
yes,
As
that
far
was,
as I know.
it was.
Because
part
it's
of
more
it.
efficient.
That's
You know,
what
for one
Danny
thing,
said,
number two,
push the hot water.
This wing's already hot water.
Mhm.
It's a bond.
Principal's
I'm sorry.
office is hot water.
Yeah,
Building.
I figured.
West side,
building
the
is
22
fine.
buildings hot water, and the library's already hot water.
You can do that.
But they all got heat exchangers to go from steam, which are, you
There's
lose
several
20% right there.
Several
So
times.
you're gonna gain 20%
I
on
learned all
all those
about it
areas
now.
already, so
You're,
October
the rest of
27th.
the areas,
Yeah.
you might as well go to hot
I'll
water,
levy you.
way more efficient.
You can do
And
only
less,
2%.
I mean, there's less maintenance and cost and everything else.
That's
All
neat.
low pressure
I can
stuff.
show you.
Yeah.
I do want to get going because it's with this week we've had here
yeah.
and trying to be with kids on the way out. So,
Yeah.
thank you everybody for coming. I
Thank
will
you.
send these emails out to these groups and then I'll let you know what they're saying. Goodbye, people at home. And